Democrats are the cause of all the problems. It is a huge news day today. This is take two. Technical difficulties, but we're back. We're doing it. So we've got a bunch of things to go into. We're going to talk about how the Democrats and why the Democrats are the cause of all the problems. We're going to go into the Supreme Court stuff. We're going to do a little bit on the Trump plan, how it affects OPEC and what we're seeing over there. We're going to get into a couple of other items. But let's get right into it. This is The Ordinary American. I'm your host, Paul Sarkis, anti-leftist show. The genesis of the show is anti-leftism, which means anti-democrat. We believe that voting Democrat is breaking yourself into jail. We believe that Sergey Brin, who we addressed yesterday, is breaking out of jail by leaving California, but he can afford to. So he, without their consent, broke everybody else into jail who can't afford to leave. This show is dedicated to confirming the reality of the people who voted for Trump, but also trying to turn the people who've been voting Democrat. We're going to do a little bit about education and show how the Democrats are the cause of the education problem too. Black Americans. Where there is systemic racism is in the education system, the education industrial complex of America. The Black-dominated schools are the worst schools. They aren't educating your children, and yet your communities keep on voting for Democrats. They've had total control for 50 years of these schools. So we're going to get into it. Okay, first, I want to show this. I try to check Truth Social, as you know, before every show. Okay, look at this. No more Mr. Nice Guy. He says up there, Iran can't get their act together. They don't know how to sign a non-nuclear deal. They better get smart soon. This is why ordinary Americans like Donald Trump so much. This speaks to us. It's simple language. I can understand this. He's been patient. He's trying to give them, he's not saying regime change. Whoever you are, whichever 797th person on the depth chart, put a deal together. But he's also running out of patience. Okay, this speaks to most ordinary Americans, the 77 million of us that voted for him. Okay, now, there's another great Twitter account. X account. Sorry, Elon. And it is called C3. I think it's got a longer name than that, but I call it C3. He's got a great, is it up? Not yet. It's up now. We got sound, we got things working. Okay, so this is what he writes. Mandami has only been mayor for 118 days. Dems have given up winning elections with policies. They focus on demographics instead. Import third world voters because Americans hate their policies. Bribe those third world voters that they imported with taxpayer benefits. Mandami is their blueprint, destroy America. And then look at the data from the last election. He only likely wins because of the foreign-born in New York. This confirms for Democrats what they are doing. This confirms the open borders policies. They don't care about America. They're the cause of the problem because you and I, ordinary Americans, we love our flag, we love God, our family, our country. Ordinary Americans, we look and say, we want to build prosperity. We want to build great families. We want to build great communities. We want to have as little crime as possible. We want to use common sense. In the crime statistic world, we know that a very few people cause most of the violent crimes. And we know that when you take those few people off the streets legally, because they're going to do bad things, and then keep them off the streets because they do bad, violent things, society gets better. We look at the Democrats who constantly let the bad guys out of jail, who are constantly doing deals to make Russia and China and others wealthier and stronger and richer by telling us that somehow it's better for us. Doesn't make any common sense. The problem is they don't have the same goal we have. They aren't looking for prosperity. They're looking for what C3 is saying. They're looking to control us through a corrupted process where they've brought in the votes and now they're just controlling society. Leftism, fascism, socialism, communism. I went over yesterday, pardon me, how Trump is one of the worst fascists of all time because he's shrinking the government. He's making government have a less of a big presence in our life. He's giving us more individual liberty and freedom. He's allowing us to keep more of our money. That's a real no-no for any leftist. I had some fun with the thumbnail today with the crown on his head. A little jab at the Democrats and the lefties, particularly because the actual king, King Charles, is here now. The left doesn't have the same goals as us. Socialism, fascism, communism, it's all the same. If all these idiot intellectual leftists who want to argue the nuance and the wordsmithing in the different ways that they're technically different, they're all the same. Big central government controlling your life. In some way, in some of those cases, they want to actually control the ownership of all of the industries. In other cases, they just want to control it through tax and regulation. Sound familiar? Tax and regulation on us individually and on our corporations. In many ways, what Trump is doing an older playbook. Eliminate regulations, eliminate taxes as much as possible. That's eliminating government from control of our lives, both in an individual way and from the corporations that we work for and that we buy things for. The great C3 there was pointing out that the Democrats, and you've heard me say this a lot, they can't win elections anymore. Not any legitimate ones. Why? They're a fringe party. They're a 20% party. If you took away all the corruption, all the stealing of our money, all the corrupted elections, they're a 20% party. So they have to bring in illegals, get them counted in the census, gerrymandering, we're going to get to that in a second, to get more congressional seats, for more electoral votes, for more power in Congress. By the way, the Founding Fathers had to deal with this. Little historical detour. The 3/5 clause, which the left likes to say, oh, see, they only valued us at 3/5 of a person. That is not what was going on. The southern states wanted to count the slaves as citizens so that they could control Congress. The northern states saw that that was a big problem. So they came up with a compromise and over time moved it out. That's the same thing that the Democrats are doing now. They want to bring in illegals, count them in the census. The census, by the way, admits that they made a mistake. That's a euphemism. That's Democrat language for we cheated. In the last census in 2020, Trump's working to fix that too. Okay? So the Democrats are the cause of the problem because in New York and in California, two big examples, they're not looking for prosperity. They're not looking for it in Massachusetts. They're not looking for it in Illinois or any of the other places that they control. Look at Oregon. I mentioned this a few weeks ago. There was some lawsuit where a guy got sued by the state government for collecting rainwater. Excuse me? Yes, and he lost. The state said, and some judge said, no, that's a public asset. That's leftism. Total control over even the rain that falls on your land. Not to mention the fact that the government wasn't going to collect that rain. It was just going to go into the ground. Control. California and New York are the two centerpieces. They're both in their own way going for big wealth taxes. California is going direct. They've got it on the ballot. We talked about this yesterday. Sergey Brin is leaving. Why? Not because he woke up and said, hey, these policies don't work, because he couldn't throw money at the problem anymore. He couldn't throw money at the problem anymore. And so what does he do? He leaves because he can throw money at that. But all the other problems that California's had, crime. Wealthy people can build gates, go behind gated communities, build them, get private security. Fires, they hire private firefighters. They don't tell you that. They hire private firefighters for their neighborhoods and for their homes. And it costs money, but they can also do things to their homes and their businesses to protect it against fires. Just look up Rick Caruso, the guy who ran for mayor last time, and what he was able to do to the properties that he owned in Pacific Palisades with fire protection. The left, the Democrats, these guys pay to get these leftists in charge. I said to you yesterday, I think it's a weakness of the mind, it's a weakness of the Constitution. They just want to be accepted by the cool kids, by the mean girls. And so they want to get invited to the right parties. They don't want somebody to say, oh, you're a Trump voter, you're a deplorable. They can't take that. 77 million Americans got tired and said, I don't care. We're voting for Trump. New York's doing the same thing. Mandami is trying to put in that tax on the second, third, fourth homes of the billionaires. Okay? It's all the same. It's all wealth extraction. I pointed out once this train situation in California, the train to nowhere that was supposed to go, I think, from San Francisco to LA or wherever, and now it goes nowhere. They've spent tens of millions. The new estimate is 230 billion. Sorry, they spent tens of billions. It's 230 billion. I now believe, and I'm probably late to this because maybe I'm being naive, that train was never intended to be built. It was always just another scam to take taxpayer dollars and funnel it to themselves, to their consultants, to their nonprofits, to their advisors, to their other people, back to them, either directly or indirectly through donations. The left is the cause of all the problems because they don't want what we want. They do not want America first. They do not want to make America great again. They want the Palpatine, the Star Wars. They want it to get so scary and bad that the citizens cry out, please take over. And in the meantime, they're just going to extract wealth from everybody through their taxes and their grift. It's terrible. Now, what went on at the Supreme Court? The Supreme Court decided. They had a case out of Louisiana. Let me see if I can get it up. Boom. There it is. The case in Louisiana was basically a case where, by the way, it was 6-3. I don't need to tell you who the three were, but I will. Kagan, Sotomayor, Jackson. And side note, Kagan wrote the only dissent. So we were hearing stories that they were trying to delay the release of these decisions that they lost so that they could gin up public outcry and maybe violence. So now we maybe have an indication that it's Kagan who's been doing most of that. Look at this chart, okay? This is a great example of how the Democrats are the cause of the problem. The court case came down and said you can't use race as a way to redistrict or make congressional districts. That's racist. The Democrats, as you can see, used their gerrymandering of when they do redistricting to make all what they would call majority black districts. Not because they were trying to be good to black people, because they weren't. They're destroying the schools. Wake up, black Americans. But because they wanted control and they knew that the black Americans vote for the Democrats in huge numbers. So now what's going to happen? This one on the right, this is what it could look like. So the Democrats could lose 12 seats. That's enormous. That's huge. But it gives you an indication of how big a cause of the problem the Democrats are. Every facet that we go into, the Democrats have corrupted it, broke the law, stretched the law, done something illegal. This is the court saying no more. So we're going to see how this plays out. It's crazy important. Okay. Now, I want to get to the great Thomas Sowell. Because Thomas Sowell talks about a whole bunch of things, but he does a lot on education over the years. And one of the things he has said over the years is that the Democrats took a false premise. All segregated schools are bad. They wrapped it in a Supreme Court decision called Brown versus the Board of Education, which came out and said, essentially, all segregated schools, are bad. Thomas Sowell points out that that wasn't necessarily true. He uses the great example of Dunbar High School. I've posted before a great piece he wrote about it. I'll try to put it up, but you can look it up. He goes into it here in this piece, which I'm going to play here now, and then we're going to talk about it, and we're going to contrast it with something else. Oh. Again with the technical stuff. Oh, okay, hold on. Oh, I don't know what the heck.
Educated, and they want to take credit for the progress that's been made. as if it all started with the 1960s. Out of Dunbar High School, there came the first black man to graduate from the Naval Academy at Annapolis, the first black general in the Army, the first black cabinet member, the first black man to become a full professor at a nationally known university. The whole educational effort following from the 1954 decision by the Supreme Court was that separate schools were inherently unequal. Whether the Chief Justice Warren believed that himself or not, he takes this picture that you see that blacks, because they're kept out of the white high schools, this will so affect their picture of the world and themselves that it will be a big educational handicap. Now, it so happens I went to one of those segregated schools in the South. There were no white people in our neighborhoods. There were no white people in our churches. There were no white people in our places where we played. If we'd found white people in the school, we would wonder what the hell was going on. Just one false assumption like that can, for years, decades now, keep the truth from coming out because people get a vested interest in that. So what's
That right there, that was a long clip, but it was an important one, I think. That one false assumption has led to all of these generations of these inner city schools being awful because the Democrats control them. Okay? The Democrats got total control of everything. This is just another example of the Democrats with their all-inclusive control. I got to have total control of everything. That's leftism. Okay, I'm going to contrast that right now with, if I can pull it up. Oh, where did it go? Hold on. There's a, gosh darn it. I'm not going to be able to find it. There is an article out. I don't know why I can't find it now, but I'm not going to bother trying to find it. But what it says is the public schools now cost 50% more than private schools in America per student. And in fact, if we farmed out all of the public schools to the private schools, we'd save $300 billion a year and the test scores would go up. So it's not a question about funding. The funding, it's costing way more money for the public schools to produce way worse results. That's because the Democrats use the public school system as a money funnel. That's all it is. Teachers unions largely, but other than the non-union people too. Some good teachers, maybe, but the system is broken because it's controlled entirely by Democrats, and all they're trying to do is forward their power and extract wealth. The great Corey DeAngelis, I don't know him, but he has an organization and he helps public school teachers who are members of the union. He's got 14,000 now who have left the union because under the Janus decision, you can leave the union, keep all your compensation, and keep your job. Stop funneling your dues into the leftist organizations, which are keeping the schools down. Okay? Sorry, I don't have that. I thought I had it up, but I don't. Oh, no, wait, I did. I found it. I want to show this to you. I just want to show this to you so you know. You can see that it's there. Okay, see that? Public schools now cost 50% more per student than private schools. That's unbelievable. And look, that's per state. And then look down here. Overall, if the government were to contract out education of the superior private schools, costs would fall by $300 billion. $300 billion. It's a money funnel. The Democrats are the cause of the problem. Okay, I want to skip over now because I've done a couple of episodes about Trump's plan. I've said he's smarter than the Democrats, than Iran, than China, than Russia. He's smarter than the left. He is. He's got a plan. He wrote it down. It's called the National Security Strategy. It's been published. I put it out on the X, The Ord American. You can go on there and find it. I wanted to really oversimplify it as it relates to OPEC. Why? Yesterday, I mentioned it on the show. UAE is leaving OPEC. What is OPEC? OPEC is a cartel. They want to keep the price high enough that they make a lot of money, so they want to keep the supply down so that they can control world oil and gas supply. 50 years ago, 40 years ago, they were much more in control because they were a much bigger producer compared to the rest of the world than it exists today. Why? Because of Donald Trump and drill, baby, drill. Back then, I'm old enough to live through it. We had gas lines. The price went up, I think, 100%. One day was even number license plates. The next day was odd number license plates. You had to wait in line. It was terrible, and it was scary. The Democrats started, even then, saying we shouldn't drill for oil and gas. It's terrible. They use the environment as the excuse. Why do I say it was an excuse? Because we produce the cleanest oil and gas of any country in the world. So when we shut down our pipelines and our exploration and our drilling, the demand doesn't go away. The demand, because we need energy as humans, just gets funneled over to the bad guys. In the past, Venezuela, Iran, China, Russia, they do dirty stuff, both in terms of cleanliness for the environment and in terms of corruption. So the Democrats, cause of the problem, they increased the amount of money the bad guys could make with their dirty energy, instead of decreasing the money they could make and increasing the money we could make with clean stuff. Trump changes that. Drill, baby, drill. We are now the largest producer of oil and gas. We exercise the warrant on Maduro, take him out. We control, which will be the biggest producer in the world at some point, and it's in our hemisphere. And we take Iran out, so now we're going to get that producing at a much better rate. The Abraham Accords, which are the Arab nations working with Israel, commerce over conflict. And then we come to the dollar. One of the things that Russia and China have understood, which is true, is that because the dollar is the world reserve currency, that puts a lot of power in the American hands. They don't like that. Well, here's the problem. They've tried to make the yuan and other currencies, the euro and others, the sort of the reserve, and it hasn't worked. Why hasn't it worked? Because they're all corrupt. Now, we're not lily white, but as they say, the dollar is the cleanest, dirtiest shirt in the dirty laundry pile. I mean, if there's that great, I forget which number, but the Hannibal Lecter story when Ed Norton is playing the FBI guy and he's talking to Hannibal Lecter, and Hannibal Lecter wants to know how he caught him. And ultimately, the Ed Norton character says, well, you did have a lot of, deficits that I didn't have. And Hannibal Lecter says, like what? And the guy says, you're insane. In other words, implying I'm sane and you're insane, so I'm going to eventually be able to catch you because your insanity will get the better of you. That's the truth about the yuan and all the leftist countries. They have an inherent problem. Leftism doesn't work. They always need corruption. So nobody feels good about doing business in yuan because they don't feel if they had a lawsuit that they get a fair shake in China. They still feel relatively safe about the dollar. What does Trump do? Trump takes all the positives we have. We're now the biggest producer of oil and gas, the dollar. We have the biggest economy in the world, so everybody wants to sell their products here. That's the tariff argument. And he uses that to our advantage, America first. That makes common sense. We don't do the Obama nonsense, his first foreign trip in 2009, telling everybody America sucks, blah, blah, blah. We're going to lead from behind. We've been terrible. We apologize. No, Trump doesn't do that. Trump says we're awesome. And if you want to sell us products, you can, but there's going to be a big tariff. However, behind door number 2, there's zero tariffs. All you have to do is make your product in America. Guess what? People are making their products in America. Manufacturing is going up. The dollar isn't going away. The UAE leaving OPEC is a sign that they are starting to see, oh, I want to be a sovereign nation. I want to do what's best for my people. I don't want to be an OPEC. OPEC is just like the UN, is just like NATO, is just like NAFTA, is just like the World Health Organization. These sort of big political constructs that just build more layer of corruption, that take away the individual sovereignty of people or countries. So Trump is getting rid of all that. America first. Make America great again. The Democrats don't want any of that. That's why they are the cause of the problems. They have an aversion to America being great. Why? They don't have power in that situation. They can't steal. So Trump, we're winning. Go back to Sunday's video. We're winning. Americans are winning because Trump is winning. Trump is winning. Listen, I think he's super smart. You know my position. I think he's the best president, certainly in my lifetime. That includes Reagan. But he's getting up there. He's knocking on the door with Lincoln and Washington in my book. But he doesn't actually have to be that smart. He is, but he doesn't have to be. Why? Because all he had to do is recognize common sense. Leftism doesn't work. We're now, I'm going to show you this one. We're now, what are we? We're 60% of Europe's liquid natural gas. 60%. I think 20 years ago, let me see if I can get this up there. We were 2%. Is that what this says? Let's see here. Okay, that's the chart, but let me go back to this. Yes, from Stephen Moore, he's an economist. US LNG has grown from roughly 2% of Europe's imports only a decade, to over 60% today. Okay, that's America winning. First of all, ours is cleaner than everybody else's, so it's better for the environment if that matters. When we make that money under Trump, we're not trying to go do bad guy things. We're not funneling money to the corrupt nonsense in Ukraine. We aren't going to start endless wars everywhere. Not under Trump. It's better for the whole world. Europe put themselves in that position. Europe didn't need to have that be the situation. They got rid of their nukes, except the French. I always mention that because even though the French make pastries great, they don't do much else great, but they do nuclear. So Trump's policies are working, and they are the antidote to Democrats being the cause of the problem. All right. So I wanted to finish up with, no, that's not it. Okay. A lot has been made of this idiot, Ilhan Omar, in her conversation or her speech, where she said World War XI. Obviously, what she was doing was she was pulling a Ron Burgundy, and she was reading her notes, and she read World War XI with the Roman numeral II, instead of realizing that's a Roman numeral II for World War II. Now, I'm going to play you it's only 20 seconds long, but I want you to see what she says after, because she catches herself. And then I want to talk about it.
Leadership in this work to repeal the outdated and dangerous Alien Enemies Act of 1798. The last time the Alien Enemies Act was invoked, it was used to detain and deport German, Japanese, Italian immigrants during World War II. Sorry. One of the most shameful.
Okay, yeah, one of the most shameful. She's shameful. Okay, I wanted to play that because it didn't get a lot of press, the part where she sort of giggles and laughs and she says World War II. It seems to me that she didn't even read this before she went on. Somebody drafted that for her and she's going out there. That's her opening section. She never even read it. Why do I bring this up? The Democrats are the cause of the problem. This person can't even pretend to be a legitimate congressperson enough to read that statement 1 second before she goes on stage. And then she giggles, World War XI. She couldn't be bothered to pretend. The Democrats are the cause of the problem. As the great Dennis Prager says, the left ruins everything it touches, and it's ruined the Democrat Party. Okay? Dan Bongino, this is one of the driving reasons for this show. his great political observation. I mention it all the time. It's worth mentioning more. The Republicans are not necessarily the solution to the problem, but the Democrats are the cause of the problem. Trump is the solution, but Thune is not. He's preventing the Save America Act going through. As I've said before, he's the only reason. The only reason why it's not going through the Senate is because he won't let it. He controls the Senate. The Senate president, majority leader, controls the Senate. Okay? The Republicans are not necessarily the solution, but the Democrats are the cause. The real solution is Trump and his policies. If you're a TDS sufferer, and I hope you're watching this, you've got to wake up. You've got to wake up. You are breaking other people into jail. Look at California. Look at New York. Look at Massachusetts. Look at Illinois. Look at Oregon. Look at Washington State. People are leaving those places. The Democrats are the cause of the problem, and they are not changing their ways right now. We have to get people to stop voting Democrat. We need to get Trump's policies through. By the way, look what's happening in Iran. Nobody ever thought this could happen. We're going to get rid of them. It's a slow trickle now to the end, but it's over, basically. They're not doing much, okay? And oil prices will start to come back down. I don't know if they'll come back down by July 4th, but they might. Okay, they might. All right, that's the show today. Take two. Now, if you like this content, please, to support us, to help get this word out, like, subscribe, and follow. It means a lot. We try to put, I try to grab as many stories. Some you have to cover, like the Supreme Court today, but try to cover it either in a different way or give you the facts that show you how it relates to the practical side of voting. Because that's where everything moves towards. It's good to be educated, but the end of the education is, what are we doing? We're voting. So that's where we're going. So like, subscribe, follow. By the way, we are on Spotify. A follow there would be great. We're going to try to get on Apple here soon, so we're on there as well. And we're going to be back here. Now, tomorrow we will not be at 2 o'clock. Tomorrow will be at 9 a.m. The link will go out on X probably about 8 or 8:30. We're doing that because I have a conflict in my schedule and I don't want to miss a day of content. No doubt there'll be a lot to go over. All right. I'm rooting for you. Please root for me.